Bob Dill. Bob, there was that one time in there where I was on the board of directors and I was actually in charge of two nonprofits, Rotary International and John T. Blout DDS. So it's great to be here. I have always wanted to come to this PETS. I'm kind of into multi-district PETS, and I'd never gotten to visit here, and it is a pleasure to be with you folks. There's a lot of Rotary brass sitting up here in places. I really don't care about you folks. I like the nominees and the president-elects. Let's hear it for them. I do care about you, really. So as Bob told you, I'm a dentist. I've spent my whole professional career as a dentist. And tonight, I am standing in front of you, an audience, ready to give a public address, a speech. Two of the most worrisome fears that any human being has, coming to see me, a dentist, and standing in front of you, an audience. So you see, we are already connected tonight through fear. So when I was in dental school, long ago, everywhere I went, people would say, "You want to be a dentist? Ooh, what? You want to be a dentist? Why would you want to do that? Why would anybody want to be a dentist?" I remember going home from university one weekend. My folks had some people over for dinner, so there was 3 or 4 couples sitting around the table, and the conversation turns to what I'm studying to be, and one of the gentlemen said, "John, you seem to be a relatively intelligent young man. Why would you ever go into dentistry?" I thought that was funny. He was a proctologist. So after a while of hearing this, I figured that I, had been mumbling responses long enough. I needed an elevator speech to tell people. And the best way I could do it was that I got together with some friends and we wrote this little poem that I'd like to share with regrets to Henry Gibson. It goes like this. I had a little toothy. It wasn't very straight. I took it to the dentist before it was too late. He put it in a band. He put it in a strap. At first it was intruded, but now it's in my lap. So back in bands he put me with straps from ear to ear and said, "Come back and see us 50 times a year." So every week I see him, but my tooth don't move so far. But my dentist, he is driving a brand new shiny car. Wow, it is terrific to be here. Thank you for putting up with my dental jokes. After 2019, I sold my practice and retired, and I loved retirement. I didn't have to get dressed up. I didn't have to go to the office. I didn't have to do those kinds of things. And so, I got to be a slob. Almost every morning, I looked kind of like this. And then the pandemic hit, and you all started dressing just like me, so I guess I was a fashion icon at that point, right? Well, it's a wonderful job that I got to do in those years, and I appreciate the opportunities that it gave me to become involved in something like Rotary. It was great. For me, standing in front of you this evening, the toughest part of giving a speech or an address is the beginning, the opening, your opening lines, how you try and capture the audience. And typically what I do is I prop myself up in my library and I start going through books and magazines and the internet, looking for stories, anecdotes, jokes, anything I can use to get your attention. And in the process of doing that over the years, I have come up with some great quotes that are inspirational in nature that I'd like to start out with and share with you. The first one comes from a former relief pitcher for the Houston Astros and then the Philadelphia Phillies. He became a broadcaster. His name was Larry Anderson, and he was quoted as saying, "If at first you don't succeed, failure may just be your thing." I am sure that appeals to the president-elects in this room. Brooke Shields was an actress, and she was in charge of the Stop Smoking campaign, or was a spokesperson for the Stop Smoking campaign. And she was quoted on late night TV once as saying, "Smoking kills, and if you're killed, you've lost a very important part of your life." Thank you for pointing that out, Brooke. W.C. Fields was a great comedian from the last century, way back in the last century. He was quoted once as saying, "There comes a time in every man's life where he has to take the bull by the tail and face the situation." Which is kind of what I'm starting to think right now. So the last quote actually does get me into my subject. It comes from a famous person that I have books of quotes from this gentleman. He had a knack. It was former Vice President of the United States, Dan Quayle. And my favorite quote from Dan is, "I think we are on an irreversible course, but that could change." I think we're on an irreversible course, but that could change. Does that mean anything to you? In Rotary, we think our organization is great. It's going strong. 25, 30 years ago, every year we had membership growth. We were going to eliminate polio. We were going to change the world. And then the next generation came along, and they weren't so happy coming to meetings every week. And all of a sudden, the pandemic hit, and everything changed. Or maybe your Rotary Club has been spiraling downward for a while. No good programs, there's no energy, there's no morale. And then something happens, or someone comes along and changes it. And all of a sudden, you excel. We're on an irreversible course. Any way you look at it. But that could change. So, any of you, how do I put this? Let's put it this way. Quick tally. How many of you are tired of Zoom? Raise your hand. I know what the rest of you that are not raising your hand, you don't want to put on clean clothes or makeup. You want to just stay at home. I get it. Well, I can relate both ways. Here is a picture of how I picture myself as a speaker. Everything's kind of in good shape. My tie's on straight, and my zipper's up, and it's a big stage, and there's big images behind me, and that's the way I picture myself. For the last 3 years, I look more like this. Not as much fun. So one of the results of the pandemic was that we had to find new tools. We had to find different ways to connect with people. We had to use our imagination. We had to somewhat innovate. Another thing that it did for us, many of us, is it gave us real-world insight as to how important that connection thing is. I mean, we would do anything to get together with our Rotary Club members. Our connections were the most important thing. Think about that. Our relationships meant that much that we would go through some very unpleasant experiences just to get together. So think about that. Put that right there, and I'm going to come back to it. Think about that. In 2011, when I was just exiting the board of directors, and I became the chair of our communications committee, the volunteer chair. We have a full staff that's in communications in Rotary International. And we were figuring out that we needed a brand reinforcement. We needed to look at our brand. For those of you that don't know what branding agencies do, they try and take your whole organization and boil it down to a simple concept, maybe a word or a phrase. So one thing. So you know what this means. This is like Mercedes excellence, and Apple innovation, and Nike athletic excellence. So we hired a company called Siegel and Gale to do a brand reinforcement. And they reviewed lots of the surveys. As Vicki told you today, we do a lot of surveying, and we always have. And they reviewed a lot of our past surveys and to develop a concept. And then they sent out their own survey, which was very robust, I think, to all the countries that Rotary was in, or all the regions. And I think they had something like 47,000 returned, and they were specific on one type, very high percentage return rate. And they came back to us, and they said, we cannot boil Rotary down to one thing. We cannot do it, because you're exactly divided between two things. One is relationships, and the other is service. Half of your organization feels that the most important reason that they joined and that they stay in is relationships, and half of them said the only thing that I care about in Rotary is service. So in 2020, during the pandemic, we surveyed every new Rotarian and asked very similar questions that Siegel and Gale had asked 10 years earlier. And interestingly, 50.5% of the respondents said, I joined because of service. And there's all these little sections of the surveys that you add up to say that, basically. And 49.5% of them said, I joined for the relationships, which included the fun, the business contacts, the professional development. All of those things were kind of lumped under relationships. Same thing 10 years later, 50-50, service and relationships. In 2020, we also surveyed people that had been in Rotary for at least a year, and we asked them why they stayed. The results were a little bit surprising. They stayed, 54% of them stayed for the relationships. 46% of them stayed for the service. And we always thought it was the opposite of that. We always thought that you joined Rotary for the business, and then you saw what we did, and it became so important to you that you stayed because of the service. Relationships drive this organization. Relationships and connections and connectivity drive this organization. Those are elements that build our relationships. Going out together, getting together, being together, club meetings. It's in our DNA. So from the very beginning, Rotarians got together in each other's offices and rotated offices. And then that progressed to, let's get together weekly. And then if you're not there, let's make sure that we get you there so we have required attendance. And then it progressed from that to some digital connections on the early e-clubs. We have been about connecting together our entire existence. It's in our DNA. It's in our genetic code. You can't avoid it. Why is this important to you folks tonight? You're incoming leaders of your clubs. I believe the most important thing you can do is on everything that you have in front of you, you ask that question, why? Why is the most important question that you can ask as you prepare for your year? I think it was Aristotle, or maybe it was Plato, that said long ago, one who knows how will always work for one who knows why. Actually, I looked that up. It was David Lee Roth, the lead singer. I can't believe it. The lead singer from Van Halen who actually said that. It didn't go back to Plato, and so I'm totally wrong on that one, sorry. One of our new philosophers stated that. Because the next question after you answer the why is, okay, what do we do? Because you're in charge. What do we do? Are we building relationships in the way we run our organization? Is that a prime goal, or are we making sure that we can do that next project better and better? Not that that's wrong, but are you putting the same energy into building the connections, the relationships? Our connections can be powerful. I know this personally. As a young dentist in the town of Sebastopol, I was invited to join a Rotary Club. I'd go every week. I didn't know anything about the town. I just moved there. I didn't know anything about Rotary, but I had a great time. And I would sit next to people that were significant in the community, and I would learn from them. I would learn from them for free, where if I went to their business, it would cost me money. And I started to buy at Rotary. We talk about, well, the business of Rotary, you got to be careful with that. I went there to buy. I bought my real estate agent, I bought my life insurance agent, I bought my lawyer, I bought my accountant. I bought people that I could trust because I was sitting in the chairs with them. It was amazing. And on top of all of that, it was fun. It was so fun. I was in a lot of organizations. I came to town and I joined, okay? And I started throwing away some of the other organizations and doing more and more Rotary. And the reason was I figured it out. The reason was it was kind of like a triad. It was like this rope that was tangled together of three things: fellowship, fun, good times, friends, integrity, honesty, ethics, excellence, and service. All joined together in one organization. As an example, I was a member of a church. It had a high amount of integrity. It actually did do some things for people. Wasn't always that much fun to go to. I was a member of a poker club. Heck of a lot of fun. Absolutely no integrity. Didn't do anything for anybody, especially me. Do you see my point? Rotary gave me all those things. And if you add to those three things the fact that it's very diverse, has been, will be more so, all around the world, every language, creed, color, every business, the diversity that is in our DNA is huge. And then you add the last thing is that we want leaders. We want people that are responsible. We want people that can make a decision, that have a heart, but they also know the budget. And those are our 5 core values: fellowship, integrity, service, diversity, and leadership. You'll never forget it again. Promise me. So as this young 32-year-old, somewhat arrogant, incoming club president, I went to my first non-club Rotary event, a multi-district pets, just like this. And it changed me. Yes, I learned a lot about Rotary, and I learned the stuff I was going to have to do as a president, and I learned all that stuff, but that wasn't what was so great. What was great was I was sitting next to people that were entrepreneurs. They were people that had ideas, they had energy, they had enthusiasm, they had positivity, and I was there with them, and I learned from them, and it made me a better businessman. It made me a better person in my Rotary Club. It made me a better person, period, to be with those kinds of people. I have to tell you that in those days, as an incoming president, they gave us these beautiful binders, shrink-wrapped and everything, that had all the materials that you get online now on how to become a good president. And I'm a little embarrassed to tell you this, but mine still sits in my basement, still shrink-wrapped. So later on in the year, in the spring, I went to my first district conference. I felt like I had to go. The club paid for me to go. And it was kind of boring at first, but then they brought on the group study exchange team, the GSEs. We don't have it anymore. We have similar things, but it was popular for many, many years. And they had these 5 people from England. And they were so funny. They were so great. They were as good as any comedy club I'd been to. And all of a sudden, I felt like, I want to be more with this global community. This seems pretty fun. And then in the afternoon, they brought on the youth exchange kids. It's embarrassing to see a grown man cry for something like that. But it touched me. And I wanted more. I wanted to influence kids with those kinds of principles. I wanted to be involved doing that. So several months later, I went to a foundation fundraising dinner, and I heard a gentleman named Dr. Joe Serra speak about volunteering to operate on crawlers in Malawi. He'd made 6 trips. The surgery was to release something in the back of their leg so they could actually upright with braces and not crawl along the ground where the leading cause of death was snake bite. I saw his images. I felt his benevolence. I sat at a table where everybody was in tears. And I opened my wallet. It didn't come from some promo from RI. It didn't come from anything online, because nobody knew what online was in those days. They thought it was on a train or a bus. It was the experience of being with Rotarians and hearing Rotarians tell their stories. It was magic. Connections. Being together. Relationships. Rotary gatherings. Events. And especially your club meetings. It's the most important thing, in my opinion, that you can influence next year. I don't know what kind of shape your club's in. We've all been kind of bounced around a little bit. You may be almost starting over. Several clubs are. Which is a great challenge and a great opportunity to design it based on how do we do a better job like they did 118 years ago, connecting together, being an organization full of relationships. So how do you do this? Well, I won't take much time. I'm not a teacher here. I'm just a lowly speaker. And let me give you a couple things that I would suggest doing. The first is I would take a survey, an inventory of what you are inheriting. What is it that you really get? And I mean some real data. Find out what you're getting. So once you do that, I would like you to do 4 things. First, vision. I want you to have a vision for what you want the year to come and look like next year. This gentleman doesn't look like he's got a vision, looks like he's like caught in the headlights. And I don't want you to be that way. I want you to think seriously about what's your club going to look back like on June 30, 2024. What's it going to look like? Because you're in charge. Vision is a great thing. Get together with people. Do some brainstorming, the people you trust. Wide diversity of your club. Get together and answer the question, if we were to do this, what if this would happen? Or, I think this is a good idea. What if we do it? Start filling in those questions of how you can make your club better from scratch. From scratch. Generate ideas and pass them around. Never forget what the beaver told the rabbit when they were both sitting gazing up at the huge expanse of the Hoover Dam. No, the beaver said, I didn't build it myself, but it's based on an idea of mine. Second, communication. There it is. You know, I put this slide up last year at a multi-district pets, and from the audience somebody yelled, must have been the governor's business visit. Who are you talking to? We are all enthralled with the methods of communication that are at our disposal. I mean, social media, the internet, it's mind-boggling. And what are we using it for? Do not take a picture of your dessert and send it online, please. Are we really getting value out of the way we communicate? You go on social media and it's just constant. And you get your emails in the morning and there's 300 of them and 295 of them are from advertisers. And you think that you are going to send out an email and have any effect on people in the middle of all of that morass, in that unending pit, where, by the way, folks, you get to see these people in person. Do you know what advertisers pay to get to your members? Do you know what they pay salespeople to try and connect personally with your members? And you get to see them all the time. Don't rely on terribly inefficient and ineffective. You might think it's efficient. I can push one button and I can send it to my whole club. Yeah. They're not reading it, so why are you sending it? Talk to them. Call them up. See them at a meeting. Stay late. I know it's harder if your club's got 400. How many clubs have 400 members in here? See, there's nobody that has it that hard. That's a problem. So communicate effectively, not efficiently. The third thing is collaboration and team building. Failure to build a team will leave you looking like this gentleman right here. Exhausted, tired, and probably ineffective. Now, we will have to tell you that that gentleman was not ineffective. He was posing for me to take that picture. He's a good person. Team building. Let me ask you a question. I'm in Texas. Would Greg Popovich send out a survey to his players on the San Antonio Spurs and ask them what they wanted to do next year? No, there is no chance. There is no chance. Why are you sending out a survey saying, what do you want to sign up for next year in Rotary? Does anybody still do that? It's done a lot in my area. Build a team. Are you just trying to fill out an organization chart? Or do you want to build a team? Because if you want to build a team, then know where you're going, know who you're talking to, and know what position you're putting them in or asking them to be in or asking them to do. You have got to turn people on to get them to work for you. Trust me. But it's magic if you do that. They will work harder for free than you can ever think possible. I wrote this down a couple years ago about teamwork. And I can't say it any better, so I'm going to quote myself. I've always believed that team building comes from strong leadership, a sense of purpose, calculated goals, and faithful interaction. Build a team. Responsibility. Now, this is my club president. During the pandemic, knowing that he was responsible and starting to drink. Not necessarily the right solution. Let me give you the rest of the story. We never closed down. We met outdoors with a small group that grew as the county let us grow. And so we moved from a garage to a winery outdoors. And that picture was from his presidential start to a meeting one day. So, responsibility. You know, people are putting their trust in you. You're the leader. People are giving you a gift, the gift of followership. They will follow you. Where are you going to take them? And when are you going to take the responsibility? And that goes from having to do something when something unexpected like the pandemic happens, to the speaker not showing, and everything in between. The buck stops with you. Don't shirk it. Don't blame somebody else. Take that responsibility, because that's what they ask you to do. Prepare. Be prepared. Imagine what could go wrong and be prepared for that. So I hope you take this weekend and consider how your Rotarians connect. And I hope that you create an environment in your club that brings value to the lives of your members and the people they serve. I was sitting with a friend of mine at the end of a day in San Francisco, the Hyatt Regency Hotel, at the restaurant on the top, a building that would rotate 360 degrees. Doesn't do it anymore, but it did it then. And as we looked out the front window, we saw the eastern side of the city and a polluted sky and the tops of industrial artifacts, air conditioners, dirty laundry, things like that. And we continued to enjoy our conversation and enjoy our drink. And a few minutes later, we looked out that same window and we saw the most beautiful sunset and the Bay Bridge over a beautiful bay that led to the Pacific Ocean. And all we'd done was rotate a few degrees. A few degrees made all the difference. I'd like to close with a quote from a gentleman that I've quoted for the last 34 years. His name is Robert Fulghum, artist, philosopher, teacher, author of the book, All I Needed to Know I Learned in Kindergarten. Mr. Fulghum told thousands of Rotarians at an international convention in Portland, Oregon, that the world, our own society, is filled with passengers, with spectators, with the narrow, the self-interested, the indulged. But this hall and this organization is filled with people who have put muscle and blood and life itself against the wheel of human endeavor to push us out of the mud that we get stuck in. And in the process of doing that, they know how to laugh and how to sing. This is Rotary, a simple little club, a grand, sophisticated movement. This Rotary that we now entrust to you next year. So go to it.